Hi again, everyone. I'm Ollie Matthews. This is Societal Narcissism. This video is sponsored by contribution from Brad. Brad sends in a video clip, but before we get to that, I ask everybody to go to the description box of this video and click on the Rumble link to this video, and I ask everybody to watch the Rumble version to this video as I am monetized over there, and it'll help with the channel's success greatly. On to the subject matter at hand. Why boomers insist they had it harder. Well, this should be fun. Here we go.
According to the Federal Reserve, baby boomers have officially become the richest generation to ever live, with a combined net worth of 4 times that of millennials. But
4 times of millennials. And what was it compared to everyone else? Let's see.
Ever live, with a combined net worth of 4 times that.
Let's see, 80.65 trillion to the baby boomers, 44.82 trillion. So they've almost doubled Gen X, which is just the next generation up. They've doubled the wealth of Gen X. And then millennials are 20,000, and silent generation was behind them, was only 20 trillion. So they have 3 times the amount of what their parents have, twice as much as what their kids have, and 3 times as much as their grand. Jesus, they stole from everybody. But let me tell you something. They're pissed about that extra 24 trillion that the Gen Xers got. Whew. Wow. 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 What a graphic. What a graphic. That's assets. That's assets right now. That is crazy. What a crazy graphic.
Of millennials. But despite the fact that no living generation will ever reach that level of wealth accumulation, many boomers still believe they got the short end of the stick.
Of course they do. They want it all.
With a conviction so strong, people are already attacking the premise of this video without even giving me a chance to explain. So why is the wealthiest generation in American history so convinced they lived a life of harm?
Because they're sociopathic narcissists. That's why. Because everything they have done since 1954 has been to protect their bullshit.
Hardship. Following World War II, while both Europe and Japan faced the immense task of rebuilding from the war's catastrophic destruction, the industrial dominance of the United States, combined with nearly 70% of the world's gold reserves, allowed it to emerge as the dominant force in the global economy. And as the US accounted for half the world's industrial output, it was also backed by strong union representation and newly developed labor protections, which drove wages up by over 60% by the end of the war, allowing millions of soldiers to return home to a nation primed for economic growth, where between 1946 and 1964, 76 million baby boomers were born in the United States, an increase of nearly 50 million more children than the baby booms of the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia combined.
Everywhere. They're just everywhere.
Setting the cultural expectation that the sheer size of the baby boom alone would guarantee continued American prosperity. But despite the baby boom being fueled by post-war economic expansion, where homeownership jumped from just 40% before the war to over 60% by 1960, it's crucial to understand that the majority of parents tasked with raising nearly half the nation's population had spent their own childhoods under a rigid and disciplinary model mirrored by the assembly line, as children contributed nearly 30% of household income leading up through the 1930s, where this live-to-work mentality was only compounded by the psychological weight of the Great Depression, followed immediately behind the responsibility of defending the country throughout the Second World War. And while history would later come to label this period as the golden age of capitalism, for the parents living through it, it wasn't about prosperity. It was about figuring out how to raise a child in a world they didn't recognize, creating a parenting model fundamentally rooted in fear and unspoken rules, as they prioritized permanence, routine, and material stability, while attempting to resolve their own childhood traumas and anxieties through
They spoiled the boomers.
the lives of their children.
These boys greet their dad as though they are genuinely glad to see him, as though they had really missed being away from him during the day and are anxious to talk to him.
Causing hundreds of thousands of parents to look for the aid of professionals to help mold what was increasingly seen as the perfect child, where Dr. Benjamin Spock's The Common Sense Book of Baby and Childcare became
How are his kids?
the defining voice of this movement, selling over 500,000 copies in just 6 months, second only to the Bible, where his philosophy emphasized a permission to be flexible, prioritizing
These Dr. Spock books, my mother read this shit.
emotional well-being and personal happiness over the strict disciplinary model their parents had experienced. However, this emphasis on flexibility and responsiveness was often twisted into permissiveness, where parents now believed they had the right to relinquish their authority and replace it with the pursuit of material goods, resulting in cultural movements where psychologists, educators, and even Eleanor Roosevelt encouraged parents to treat their children as adults, warning that if parents use too much discipline, it could lead to years of emotional damage. Where Lauren Samuel, an American cultural historian, explained that Europeans who had taken jobs as camp counselors in the United States throughout the late 1950s were taken back by the brashness of American children. Campers were pseudo-mature and superficially self-assured, with respect given to adults only if the latter provided their worth. Having fun was pretty much all that mattered to these campers. This
is 1957. This is what I'm telling you about these boomers. Post 54, that was it. That's the influx. That's when communism knew they had us. That's when you get the influx of Marxist communist ideology.
Descriptor spoiled coming up more than any other. American children were already highly materialistic, these counselors concluded, far more interested in things like cars, television, and business than their European counterparts. Parental love was expressed mostly by the means of things purchased for the campers, a stark contrast to the generational bond in counselors' own countries. With the New York Times stating, the overprivileged, overprotected, overindulged child of the oversolicitous parents may well grow up with problems as difficult to himself as those of the youngster who has had too few of the good things of life. Meanwhile, as the Cold War reignited the nation's growing fear of communist expansion, policymakers and educators began framing baby boomers not just as children to raise, but as a mass population to manage, arguing that a rapidly growing America would require greater centralization.
They're fighting communism with communism. I mean, it's almost brilliant. That's how subversive it is. Oh, no, we're fighting communism by doing this. Meanwhile, it's what communism does. They play the long game. Subversive from within.
And government control at the expense of traditional values like autonomy and self-determination. As Robert Cook, director of the Population Reference Bureau, warned in Parents Magazine, how long will it be possible to maintain the American tradition of liberty for the individual in an increasingly crowded economy is another basic question, one for all Americans to ponder. However, instead of national reflection, economist Walt Rostow, chief advisor to Kennedy and Johnson, outlined in his 1960 Cold War Manifesto, The Stages of Economic Growth, that the final goal of American development was not political liberty or individual autonomy, but high mass consumption.
That's it. We're just tax slaves, debt slaves. That's it. That's it. It's not about you. It's about keeping the fucking world order going.
Where he argued that technological innovation and material abundance, not population growth, would drive economic success, fundamentally shifting the economy to prioritize the short-term effects of the baby boomer size and future purchasing power, rather than establishing the jobs and systems needed, not only for the boomer generation as they came of age, but for future generations to come, with teachers specifically being instructed to discourage individualistic thought and action by instead overly promoting group participation, turning the classroom into a tool to shape conformity. Preparing students to serve a collective, disciplined, and economically productive role.
That's what I'm talking about, that square peg in the round hole, after they started turning everything away from trades into college prep. And if you didn't go to college, you were a loser and you were never going to have a job. And it was just, they reworked how you learned. They reworked what history was and how they taught it. It was just not good.
In America's ideological fight against communism, a decision that not only cemented consumption as the backbone of American life, but abandoned long-term planning in favor of immediate political and economic gain, placing even further pressure on a generation already being plagued with unrealistic expectations. With American journalist Betsy Fancher
poor them,
stating, in our efforts to provide all the advantages, we have produced the busiest, most competitive, highly pressured, and over-organized generation of youngsters in history, and probably the unhappiest. Where a 1959 report issued by the federal government, based on classroom observations from educators and visitors, revealed that American school children, many in 4th through 6th grade, were already showing signs of deep emotional distress. The report described students as burdened with inner anxieties and in need of security and reassurances from their parents and teachers. Common fears included failing tests, parents becoming sick or unemployed, and more extreme anxieties like being hurt by knives, poison, fire, or holdup. But the most striking phrase used,
all of that is communist propaganda. That's when they started pumping 1954, after the censure of Joe McCarthy. They started pumping all of this communist subversion into the schools. This is why the boomers ended up the way they ended up.
Was a pervasive fear of life, where as a result of the Korean War and rising military tensions, Samuel Witchell, a professor of social studies at Gloucester State College in New Jersey, argued that families' increasing habit of relocation had much to do with children's discontent and growing distrust of authority. The post-war expansion of the economy, construction of interstate highways, and creation of entirely new neighborhoods encouraged Americans to move for better job opportunities. But just as the suburbs failed to offer a lasting sense of place, this newfound mobility caused a deeper feeling of rootlessness, comparing the spatial...
So now what they're saying is the suburbs were the problem. The backbone of America is what they're trying to tell you what the problem was.
disorientation to the experience of an immigrant arriving in a foreign country, suggesting it was the foundation for what he called social adjustment problems among American children, where this was also accompanied by the looming threat of nuclear war, which triggered a surge of studies throughout the 1980s, warning that an entire generation was coming of age with a profound sense of helplessness, with Harvard's Department of Psychology stating, this fear of nuclear annihilation fostered a sense of having no future, an anxiety that persisted into adulthood, influencing personal decisions like delaying marriage and creating a future generation. In England, the School of Humanities and Social Sciences observed a
Why was there this nuclear scare though? Why? It was all by design. The purpose was to destroy it. This is the purpose, to create a generation of sociopaths.
similar trend, writing, the threat of nuclear war involves an overwhelming threat to the individual's future, that he or she will have no future, that there is no point in planning for marriage, children, or a career. And according to the Department of Psychology at Illinois,
It's all communist subversion. All of it. You have to begin to see it now. This is why your boomer parents were the way they were.
there is also cynicism, sadness, bitterness, and a sense of helplessness. Children perceive that the adult generation is unable or unwilling to halt the arms race, which would only be compounded by the Vietnam War, as it was transformed from a distant conflict into televised images of body bags, burning villages, and student protests, further dividing the country, as 80% of the soldiers who served in Vietnam came from poor working-class families that could not afford college deferment, where the devastating loss of key cultural and revolutionary leaders, the Pentagon Papers, and Watergate resulted in a generation consisting of 76 million individuals who were raised on the promise of America.
All communist propaganda. Again, Watergate, communist propaganda.
American prosperity, only to be shaped by pervasive fear that their own future was entirely out of their control, and a lasting belief that they had been completely robbed of their ability to create a better tomorrow. And while America's guaranteed economic prosperity experienced the dollar losing 53.7% of its value between 1970 and 1980, or 10% more than the loss in value in the last 2 decades, baby boomers gravitated towards a leader who promised to restore order through less government intervention, low taxes, free markets, and deregulation, promising that the benefits would trickle down to the middle and working class.
Right. Once they got old enough where it matters to them. Like, now I want the country to succeed because I'm in my late 20s, early 30s. Now it matters. Now I'm going to do what's best for myself until my Gen X kids come of age. Then I'll go back to voting the same liberal bullshit I always have, and me.
With Ronald Reagan's presidency solidifying a lasting ideological shift that redefined prosperity as the result of individual effort rather than collective support, deepening skepticism towards labor unions, social programs, federal regulations, and even fellow Americans, as they were reframed as barriers to growth rather than safeguards for stability, where the inevitable lack of long-term planning throughout the 1950s and 60s left baby boomers entering a labor market that was never built to support them, with a 1983 New York Times article, Baby Boom to Job Bust, highlighting how companies that continued campus recruitment had compounded the oversupply problem by raising their hiring standards. In fields like retail, which had not cut back on college hiring, recruiters found themselves in the enviable position of considering only the top graduates, while simultaneously requiring work experience. Don Franklin.
This is not what happened with the boomers. Like, they never had issues getting jobs. What is he talking about?
Franklin, director of executive recruitment for Gimbel's Midwest, noted, "A few years ago, we were happy to find students who had done well academically and were enthusiastic about our company. Now, in addition to good grades, most of my colleagues in retailing are hiring graduates who have had work experience, preferably in this field, and who played a leadership role in extracurricular activities." While Bob Junius, manager of college relations for Continental Bank, added, "In the last few years, more and more graduates, particularly those in liberal arts, tell our recruiters they are willing to be tellers or secretaries if they cannot get into one of our management training programs. We've refused to do that because we suspect they would become frustrated and, as a result, less productive if we couldn't move them into a better job."
Where's Gimbel's and Continental Bank these days? Exactly. So why would you be quoting anything they have to say?
Relatively quickly. And we can't guarantee that, causing baby boomers, particularly the younger generation Jones, to simply prioritize career advancement above all else, where the yuppie stereotype, marked by designer clothing, luxury cars, and an aggressive obsession with...
They prioritized because they were in competition with everybody, including their own children. It wasn't some deep, we got to do this because the job market... No! They just want it for themselves.
Climbing the corporate ladder to become the symbol of a generation told to conform, redirecting their anxieties into productivity and endless material consumption, trading the potential of sustainable and shared growth for the illusion of individual advancement, no matter how fleeting or how unequal the outcome. Where despite the 2008 global financial crisis completely altering the trajectory of millennials' careers, and Generation X experiencing the largest net worth decline of any generation, a 2010 Pew Research...
Generation X, the biggest decline of any generation. So they took it from us. as per usual.
Survey found that 80% of baby boomers were dissatisfied with the direction of the country. By comparison, just 60% of millennials, 69% of Gen Xers, and 76% of silent and greatest generation adults reported the same. And even more revealing, 21% of boomers believed their standard of living was lower than that of their parents at the same age, compared to just 14% of all non-boomer adults, creating a generational cycle of arguing over who had it worse, rather than channeling any collective effort into actually changing the system. And so what I hope that we can begin to recognize is that fundamentally, we're saying the exact same thing, that this cycle is continuously repeating itself, and it will continue to do so because we're failing to have effective and productive conversations. If our attempt at making things better is arguing over who had it worse, that's a recipe for disaster. It's absurd that is the path we're choosing to go down. But in certain ways, it makes sense.
I'm not having an argument of who had it worse. We know who had it worse. I'm having an argument over what the reality is, that they got 4 times the wealth of any other generation.
Because in American culture especially, we have no ability of having conversations, absolutely none. And I think it's because predominantly we like to speak and not listen. And a lot of us, the things that we speak about, we have no idea what we're even talking about. We're regurgitating what we heard from the inflammatory news headlines and the propaganda that we're taught in schools and the biases that are inherited from our parents and all these other aspects. At some point, we have to realize that we're just human beings. I don't understand why we look at ourselves as the enemy. Yes, it was hard to enter the labor market throughout the 70s and 80s. The system...
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It was easy. It was easy. There were jobs everywhere for these people. What are you talking about?
Was not built for the massive population that entered the job market. But it wasn't built for the Gen Xers that entered the highly competitive and global job market that was defined by the dot-com bubble. It was especially not built for the millennials entering the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression to then just be completely left out to dry. And not only that, but blamed for their inability to achieve any sort of financial success. Gen Z, I couldn't even tell you what we're experiencing. It is a complete disaster. Where 500,000 jobs are going to be completely just entry-level jobs.
Yeah, he doesn't, like, he knows the boomers are a problem, but he still doesn't understand, like, how easy it really was for them back then. Like, it wasn't this issue for them. Otherwise, why do they have all the wealth they do?
Are going to be completely gone by AI in the next 2 years. That's 2 years. 300,000 American jobs are outsourced every single year. Those aren't things that we talk about because we choose to argue, to do these pointless comments in the comment section, to get upset at your neighbor over these pointless events, than actually do anything of substance. There's no substance. And so I am here as a 25-year-old that I have 2 goals in my life, and this has primarily been my goals throughout my entire life. I care about the United States. I want to make this place just a little bit better than where I found it. And I don't know what that means, but I want to make it a better place because I care about it. I also want to have a family. And so for me to become a good father at some point, to have kids and hopefully grandchildren, I don't want them to look at me and say, why didn't you do more throughout your time? I don't want them to say, wow, Dad, wow, Grandpa, you lived through the greatest age of American history, because what they're now dealing with
all right, this is a little bit theater kitty.
Scraps of scraps. I don't want that. So I am choosing to put my best foot forward, to have to say things like in my intro of people are already attacking this, to try and get their attention, just to try to spread this word. I don't care about, the whole generational conflict in these certain aspects.
You better care about it because they care about it. See, and he says he's 25, so he's a kid. He doesn't get it yet. He sees there's a problem, but he doesn't understand the problem.
I just want things to be better. I just want people to be a little...
Like, you're taking these boomers at their word that they don't understand. They understand. They get it. They just don't care.
A little bit happier, more at peace. I don't want us to be fighting amongst ourselves. The way the United States will fall is if we continue to keep acting like this. So younger individuals, what we have to do is we can't look at older individuals.
The way the United States will fall is by the boomers burning it all down on their way out. That's it. That's it. They control that much of the wealth and that much of the assets. It's on them.
And first, talk about things that we don't understand. We don't know about the intricacies of the Cold War, about the impacts of having to continuously move because your father probably is serving in the Korean War. We don't understand about...
You're talking about somebody who was alive for the Korean War is probably in their 80s now. Like, I mean, I don't even know how many of them could even be left at this point. Like, again, you can't keep making excuses for this generation.
About what it's like to have a government not know what to do with a massive generation. So it decides to...
They don't. It's not that they didn't know. This generation was made like this on purpose. This is by design. The whole purpose of the boomer generation was to destroy Western culture.
Test and begin to manipulate these different aspects of a young person's life. I mean, now we probably are experiencing that, but at least they've been working on it for a while, I guess. And so if we choose to address older individuals just in terms of economic prosperity that they most likely didn't even realize they were experiencing, I doubt the mother of 4 kids was sitting there just thinking, wow, we are living through the greatest age of American capitalism. They were probably focused on the very things they didn't have. That is a natural part of humanity, especially in American culture where we predominantly have everything we want. And so
that's why envy is one of the 7 deadly sins. You're not supposed to envy or covet. That's why it's one of the deadly sins.
If we look at them and say, you had everything, look at inflation adjusted numbers, all that's going to do is bring an emotional response, right? And so what we have to begin to do is understand a little bit more of the bigger picture of, hey, look, in many ways, you guys sold out our future. But also, what are we going to do about it? Okay? Because I just want...
What can you do? 79% want to take it all with them, have no plan, no desire to share it with the younger generation, share it with their families. They want to take it all with them and burn it all down on the way out. So what do you do?
Things to get better. I don't really need I'm sorry or anything. I just want things to be better. Older individuals, you got to learn how to communicate. You can't just keep being emotional and inflammatory over every single thing that questions your established narrative. You have to realize that you have these things set by fear, and that just a little thing that
it's not fear. It's not fear. It's not fear. It's entitlement. It's not fear. Stop confusing. The boomers aren't afraid. The boomers are entitled. The only thing the boomers are afraid of is losing their entitlement. That's it. Is having their entitlement challenged. That's their only fear.
Maybe breaks that mold.
These anxieties you're talking about, they're not real. They're not real.
You're just igniting and erupting. You can't live through the news. The news isn't real. None of this is real. The person in front of you is real, so you have to learn how to speak with them. We need the 20% that controls 50% of wealth to begin to actually do something, and we need to have it happen quick. Because if it doesn't, again, none of this is really worth talking about, because the trajectory we're on isn't just going to fix itself. There isn't just some savior out there. There isn't just the next policy. All of that continuously is showing us it isn't going to work. We have to come together. We have to find, this is the goal that I want. For me, I want to have a better United States, and I want to have a family. So I will do everything I can to be able to pursue that direction. Find what it is that you can do. But I guarantee you the biggest change will happen if we can have conversations. So I want to just end.
They don't want conversations because conversations lead to gaslighting, lead to gang stalking. They want that. The idea that you think you can change this generation as a whole, that you think you're getting through to this 79%, all you're going to end up doing is having yourself gaslighted and that you're the problem.
This out with this quote that I found throughout my research. I think it's a really great way to be able to conclude. What is happening to our young people? They disrespect their elders. They disobey their parents. They ignore the laws. They riot in the streets, inflamed with wild notions. Their morals are decaying. What is to become of them? Written by Plato more than 2,300 years ago. And thank you all so much for your support. I really hope this was able to provide value, and I appreciate the time that you have given. I hope that you can see that I really am trying to uncover the things that are plaguing us. I just want things to get better. And
like you identified the problem, but you think that this 79% wants a solution. The boomer doesn't want a solution to the economic problem. The boomer wants the rest of it. The boomers pissed off that Gen X has 44 trillion and that Gen Y or the Zoomers have 20 trillion. They want it all. Why should you have any? You think you're making the mistake of thinking that the boomers want a solution. They don't. They just want you to shut up about it.
And I want people to be able to have some sort of fulfilled life. If you live in the United States, you should be able to experience prosperity.
They want to burn it all down on the way out.
The fact that many people aren't able to do so and then are blamed for not being able to do so, in my opinion, shouldn't be acceptable. And I'm just going to keep putting my best foot forward. And I just ask of you to, please just continue to do the best that you can. And that's all that we can do at the end of the day. So, yeah, until next time, thank you all so much. Bye-bye.
Cheer. These kids get more and more arrogant.
Oh, bullshit, man. Come on, Vern. The kids haven't changed. You have.
And that's Damien Cat, 113,000 subscribers, 282,000 views from 5 days. I can't break 1,000. That's neither here nor there. So, it's a good video. I mean, his heart's in the right. He knows the problem. The numbers are staggering. But the boomer doesn't want a solution to the economic problem. The solution they want is give it all to me. I want it all. I want it all. Why should you even have anything? Unbelievable. 3 times what their parents had, twice what their kids have, 3 times what their grandkids have. That's the boomer. And you think they want a solution to that problem? You even think that they think it is a problem? The only problem they see is the 100 trillion they don't have their hands on. That's it. Or the 80 trillion they don't have their hands on. That's it. That's the only problem they have. So, thank you, Brad, for your contribution and the video. Thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any opinions in the comment section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, you have a topic you'd like me to cover, something you'd like to expose, you'd like to set up a Skype, a phone call, have a private video made, you'd like to sponsor a video like this for someone who needs help and can't afford it, or just make a contribution to the channel in general to keep it supported, growing, and successful, because this channel survives 100% on contributions from all of you. Without you guys, all this goes away. So if you like what you see here and you want to see more videos like this, you know what to do with either the Cash App, Zelle, PayPal, and email links in the description box below. Also, please like and share this video wherever you can. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and be sure to click the subscription bell to be notified of all my video uploads. Also, be sure to subscribe to both my channels on Rumble. Follow me on X and Telegram as well. I'm Ollie Matthews. This has been Societal Narcissism. Take care, everyone.